Unfortunately, we do not yet have a quorum in this room of Board of Finance members. We are expecting one shortly, and that is why you are still muted, so you don't have to hear all of our chit chat. Oh, here's Councillor Jang. I think we're getting very close. I'm going to mute you for one more second, and then we should be getting underway here in just a moment or two. But in fact, I'm going to fill in for the mayor for just a few moments, and he will be joining us as soon as he can. Councillor Hightower is literally coming in now, so that's great. President Paul should be here within the next 5 minutes, and Councillor McGee is joining us online. So with that, at 4:37, I will call to order the Board of Finance. Is there a motion on the agenda?
The motion on the agenda as indicated on the slides.
Second. Thank you, Councillor Hightower. Any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Great, the motion carries unanimously. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak? Former Councillor Busher, I will enable your microphone. And you should be all set.
I am. Thank you so much. Good evening. I'll be brief. I looked at the budget review that you're about to present, and I noticed monies that were proposed, 500,000 for BCA's building on Pine Street, which made me contemplate, does the administration ever have a conversation about a laundry list of small items that could be done for memorial, rather than looking for a mega bond, but a small amount, $500,000 perhaps, to further stabilize? The reason I'm mentioning that tonight is that I know that the IT equipment is moving out of memorial within the next 18 months. I have no idea what that is. I mean, I have no idea what that means as far as what that will entail for memorial. But if there was an opportunity, if that was going to cause some void, which could be an opportunity to stabilize this or that, I would hope that the city would seize that moment. And so I just wanted to offer that tonight, not to change your proposed budget, but there always are budget amendments throughout the year. And I would really like the city to consider that. I mean, people are focused on veterans all the time with Memorial Day. And I feel like our city only does lip service, and I really would like them to do more, especially regarding that building. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other public comments? Not seeing any. I will go ahead and close public forum. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move the consent agenda as indicated.
And is there a second? Second. Great. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to item number 4, the review of the general fund budget. So I will just share my screen here and go through a very brief presentation. There are also some accompanying materials, including the 20,000 line budget or whatever it is, if you wanted to go through all of that, as well as some memos. There's one about the moving the IT equipment out of Memorial. There's one about the Parks and Rec investments. And then there's one about the assigned fund balance. We aren't going to go into those tonight, but I'm drawing your awareness to them. Here is the big picture. Our revenues and expenses at this point in the budget are at just over 95 million. Because we are talking about some significant use of these one-time monies from the assigned fund balance, I felt it was important to pull that out so that it would be more apples to apples. And so if you do that, we come in at just under 93 million, and that is about a 5% increase from FY22 to FY23. Something else I know is very important is the tax rate, and we have gone over the municipal tax rate. What this group has not necessarily seen is the information we have on the education tax rate. So as you will see here, and as you have probably heard, the state is able to provide a rather large decrease to the education tax rate. And so that leaves us here, whether you pay the homestead or non-homestead rate, our constituents can expect a better than 8-cent decrease to their tax rates. And you'll see the FY23 highlighted with that arrow. A lot of what we've done is made some tweaks since our wonderful, marvelous nights. We got some good feedback from all the counselors who attended those sessions. Some of what we did was clean up things that you pointed out to us that were just missing, errors. And some of it were suggestions, like you will see, we have gone back to separating airport revenue in the BPD budget. That's very clear. We'd encountered an issue where the reclassifications before you in the BPD budget were not in the FY23 BPD budget. So those are there now. A lot of just sort of cleaning up. As you know, there's a lot of details here. Another big item we did was based on our discussion from the first night, the not sexy but important non-departmental budget. We revised the budget for both gross receipts and local option tax up. And you can see that here on the chart. And that adds about $500,000 of revenue between the two. And then this is mostly review. As you will recall, we are asking about making several kind of strategic investments using our unassigned fund balance. You've seen everything on this list except the highlighted item. You will recall we had a discussion about where Dewey Park even was. And the REIB sculpture that we are investing in will be put at Dewey Park. And one of the last items that we wanted to add was some money to help spruce up the park. It's my understanding that several years ago, there was some sort of quick build done there and nothing sort of more permanent has been done. And we want to make sure that park is in really good shape to show off this new sculpture. And then lastly, one of the other components of this budget is, again, obligating more of the ARPA money, and the proposed uses totaling just over $7 million are listed out here. There are no changes to what you've already seen. And that's it. There's not a lot of changes, but I am happy to take comments, questions, general venting, any thoughts you have. You want to let me vent? I have lots of venting about the budget. Councilor Hightower.
Just one more. I think I've asked for this a couple of times, is I'd really like the 2019 actual amounts.
Yes.
And I would prefer that over having the 2021 budget amount. So if we could, so if we have to lose one to get one, I would really like to see those numbers.
We can definitely do that. Yes, sorry, taking notes. Councilor Bergman.
It would be very helpful if we could see what the percentage taken by each department compared to the total would be. So for example, I think we did this last time with 19% or so, or 15% was fire. So that would be very, very helpful. And then I just want to say, and this is in light of the number of public safety concerns that are being raised across my ward, that I would like to see, and I was just looking through the line items, so I was not actually able to identify very quickly where the urban park rangers and the CSOs and CSLs are, but I personally would like, I think, how many urban park rangers, before I say I want more, but I believe I want more in the budget. Do you know
I heard from Chief Murad today that he swore in 5. I'm sorry.
I said, if he's asking about park rangers, he might
Parks.
Parks Patrol, which is different, and park rangers are yours.
Okay, yes, this is a great question. Which park rangers are you speaking about?
I want more of all these civil enforcement uniform people is what I want. You know, so in the budget to be in our parks and just be out in the community.
I can show you the CSOs and CSLs are in the BPD budget under community support. But we could talk about, Cindy, I'm not sure where yours show up.
All right, so ours is under community services under waterfront division. We have 2 full-time rangers who just started just within the past couple of weeks, are fantastic. And we have a group of seasonals.
Okay, so 2 full-time plus seasonals for parks.
My comment, and then I'll end, is that I think that it is insufficient, and I'll leave the hyperbole out, and would like to see more in the budget so that all of our community parks are staffed with non-uniformed armed officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jack.
Yeah, can you also explain a little bit more about the 500K from the DCA 400 fines Because it doesn't seem it's only PCA anymore, it seems it's a lot now. Can you detail it, like what that?
I think that is a good one that we should hold for the mayor. Because I think this is something he's been more involved with in terms of that strategic investment. So I've noted that and we'll have him answer that when he gets here. Any other questions, Councilor Chan?
Yeah, one more, and it's just about City Hall Park, in terms of safety and also maintenance, and we're just wondering, what's next as part of this budget?
That is a great question. I was just meeting with Cara today about that. So that is a partnership between the Church Street Marketplace and Parks and Rec. Is there anything you want to talk about?
I'm sorry, Councilor Jang, I didn't hear your full question.
Keeping City Hall Park beautiful. And
Yes.
what are our plans?
Yes.
Safe and beautiful.
Safe and beautiful. So that is a collaboration between the Parks Department and my department in terms of, we allow that staff to sit and keep their equipment in the same place that the marketplace staff keeps theirs, so that we can have an enhanced maintenance team very close by. They don't have to be coming from Pine Street, so they're just always there. And they can be in the park all the time. So we currently have one full-time worker who is a member of the Parks, Rec and Waterfront Department, but who reports to me, so that we can sort of keep that level of maintenance at a higher level, similar to what you see on the marketplace.
And he's outstanding, I just want to say.
And we do have additional money budgeted for security for events in City Hall Park or outside security.
No further question.
Councilor Paul?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, so when we had the presentation on the police budget, which was, it seems like a long time ago, but I think it was only Thursday. There were a couple of things, I don't know if you still have those slides or if those have been, you know, so some of those things that were part of the recruitment effort, even one-time expenses, were those, some of them were put into that budget and some of them were not. Like the public engagement coordinator, that was put into, that was actually, I think it's own line item, or maybe not, I can't remember. And then, but the recruitment, the one-time expenses were not in there that I can recall. And I just wondered if those are, because that would lower the amount that was potentially could become an assigned fund balance or a carry forward. And then actually Councilor McGee is here, so can certainly speak to that question that he asked about. And I would be interested to see the breakdown of what that unassigned or that currently unused and potentially a carry forward, what that is made up of.
Great. So getting to your first question, I am still waiting for some of the detailed numbers around how much we'll be budgeting for a recruitment firm. For instance, you'll recall that was like a TBD number. So that is not in the budget. And knowing that it is coming from the leftover money, I'm assuming it will be a wash because we'll get money in from FY22 and then we'll spend it on that in FY23. But that is an addition that still will need to be made to the next version of this budget. And that will happen over the next week, I would assume.
I was more thinking of the one-time costs, like the housing incentive, the collateral packages, the hiring bonus, the
That's right.
recruitment coordinator. Those things all did have numbers on them.
So the staff are in the budget, the recruitment coordinator, the excuse me, and the PIO are included in the budget. But last I saw, we did not have firm numbers for all of those costs. I'm waiting to have something firm for I know we have an estimate out there for recruiting, but something more firm to put with the educational bonus and all of those things. And you'll see all of those in sort of one, maybe not lump sum, but under one heading in the budget under rebuilding plan.
And I just wondered, I don't know if it's probably more a question for the acting chief, but is, all of the recruitment incentives, so to speak, and then the positions, has an effort been made to find out what young, relatively new to the profession, recruits want, as opposed to just coming
Giving them stuff?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great question. I know that a lot of our data has been worn out, come from our exit interviews and what has caused people to leave. I think you bring up a really good point on the new hiring. And I see we have HR Director Durkee here. And I don't know if there's anything more you want to add to that. I know you've been working closely with the acting chief.
Yes, I have, and we've done a compensation study. I mean, I hear Councilor President Paul, we need data to back up what we will be, what do people want? What are people looking for? And I just consequently got off a call with our old CAO, who's the city employee through negotiations, talking about previous work that had been done in this area and also discussing compensation study. I know some answers. I don't know if they're police specific, but just by the work I've done in the past year in terms of recruiting difficult to fill positions, especially with Class A, if folks, it's hard for fire and police right now that can't recruit. And one of the big obstacles is you're going to pay into a system that you may or may not want to. So that continues to be an obstacle across the city for recruitment, and how we sort of look at a cafeteria plan of options for younger folks who would want to come into these positions is something that I'm really pressing hard on, and we will not leave a stone left unturned until we get to the bottom of this. And a firm you had mentioned on one of the marvelous Wednesdays about a firm, and I've been really pushing for us to really find out what are other agencies doing. Not just we know what the state is doing. But what are people doing in other communities that have been successful, and what we're trying to do in terms of transformation, and what are those officers getting and looking for? So I think it's really important to also call out the transformation, because that is actually a more transformative, progressive police department is what folks are looking for.
That's great to know. I think that, to get behind, these, I think it's helpful to know that background, work has been done, or at least it's in process, so that we're using the money wisely. And what officers wanted, 30 years ago, was may very well not be what they want today. So if we attract the officers we want, we know it'd be helpful to know what they want. Other than a very competitive salary. Thanks.
Mayor, while we were discussing the budget, we had one question that I could not answer, and that was the question from Councilor Jang about the proposed investment at 405 Pine for BCA. And I think we're just looking for more information, but if there's a different question.
Questions how that investment be used?
Yes, because now if we talk about 405 Pine Street, we're talking about the boat launch, we're talking about the bowling alley, we're talking about the BCA.
No. Yes, thank you. So, I believe there's some discussion during the BCA presentation, and there's been, as the council is well aware, the Burlington City Arts Foundation purchased 405 Pine Street a couple years ago now. I don't remember the exact timing. And, we've gone through several stages of relationship with that property. First, there was a lease. Then after a couple years, less than 2 years, I believe, as a leaseholder, BCA Foundation, not the city, but this related foundation was able to purchase the full building with a
Recording in progress.
About half the building, or maybe a little more than half the building, to Larry Williams. There was an initial build out of art spaces during the lease period. This currently, the foundation is in a capital campaign to do an expansion of the public education, mission-related improvements within the building. Their vision is that there would continue to be a lease part of the building for other uses going forward. Up until now, the city has had zero financial contribution to either the acquisition, or this new capital campaign. We are now, the BCA Foundation has successfully secured a $500,000 grant from state government for the build out, the expansion of the education-related spaces, and to both match those funds and ensure that the rest of the capital campaign is successful. My sense is that it's important that the city put up some kind of financial contribution at this point, and unfortunately, we're in a position to do so without a tax increase, using these sort of one-time funds. That's my sense. I haven't finalized this yet, but my sense is that my budget, when we transmit this to you next week, that's the recommendation I'm currently planning on making, and have up until now. I've heard some support from other councilors. That's our plan. With that, anything you want to add to that?
No, that's great. Pretty much good through. Councilor McGee.
Yeah, quickly, I sent an email on the weekend, but specifically in regards to the police budget and increasing the number of CSOs and CSLs. Discussion that the acting chief said the department could use up to 6 CSLs and up to 12 CSOs. So, if we're going to have a substantial carry forward investments, that seems to be working really well. Hire those positions. And that's it. We'll look forward to seeing the granular detail on those one-time costs as well. Well before we are expecting to take action on it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, and appreciate the concept there. And yes, over the course of this sort of budget assembly, there's been sort of shifts in how in particular the CSO program is being utilized. And, I appreciate the thinking there, and take under advisement as we finalize the budget. So in terms of the expectation, and I think the next thing that would happen after tonight, the plan is us to meet our sort of charter responsibility to get the budget, full budget to the council by the 15th, which is 5. So I don't think it's likely we will be in a position to release further information at this point before the 15th, which would then give until the 20th be the next time to be certain for the council for further action. If there's specific areas that you're particularly concerned about in those one-time fundings, or you'd like, that you think there may be concerns about, that we try to pick out and start the conversation, have further conversations sooner, maybe we should do that offline big sort of new information dump until the 15th. Councilor Hightower.
Just since we were talking about the Burlington Police Department budget, I missed the presentation. So I've only looked at the physical presentation and I've gone back and watched the video yet. But along those lines, I guess I'm curious to hear, I believe we divided the CSLs between the CJC and the Burlington Police Department for the first hire, and I'd like to hear how that's going and if that's going well, especially like I think the combination of restorative justice practices in CJC with more traditional public safety is really valuable, and the reason we set it up that way is I'd like to hear how that's going, and then as we think about expanding, dividing it, potentially continuing to divide between those two. I did talk to very briefly to two of the folks that we hired, and they seemed to think that was a good setup. So yeah, I would like to hear more about how that's going and how we're thinking about expansion in terms of using both of those organizations. Also have to go back and look at the presentation, but when we talked about increasing diversity via community partners, as executive director of one of those community partners, I haven't heard anything about this. So I'm a little curious as to what that actually is in terms of a plan as opposed to just a list of organizations. And I think I will leave it at that. And then, of course, I guess a question in terms of potentially getting the 2019 numbers, do you know when we could expect that?
That is very easy. I could get that to you tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. It was on a different version. We didn't make it to this one, so that's my fault. That's the easy correction.
Just curious, you had mentioned about the chart about 15th. We have I thought we had a board of finance meeting on the 13th. So that would be another opportunity for the 15th, is that right? So maybe some of these things could happen before.
Further discussion from other councilors in the room, or if anyone's with us?
Yes. Okay, Councilor Bergman and Travers.
Don't see any hands up online
I haven't heard from
or in
Councilor
the
Bergman.
room, so.
I have one more.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Jack.
And it's about the police. It seems for the police, we have a new position created, I think at $65,000 to be able to better tell the story, what BPD is about. In 2019, before defunding the police, we were at 22% of the general fund allocated to the police. Now I believe it's about 19. Of those 19, how much, what is the percentage that is not associated with police officers?
I don't know, but when I pull out this number of the total budget total of department per budget, you know what I'm trying to say, I can also do that. And that would not be hard. We could do uniform officers, community support, because it's all broken up by division.
Administration.
So yeah, administration. So I'll just separate it for BPD.
And a follow-up question, if I can ask, the part that was moved, was that parking essentially?
I was just gonna
Yes.
say that, I think we should be careful with that comparison. but-
We will have to do some things and I'll talk to you about it. But yes, because we've moved parking and now we've moved administration, so certain things have to be done to try and make that an apples to apples comparison. And it will never be perfect, but we can get you something close to what you want. I'll just take parking out from the whole.
And sorry, what was the note on administration that you just said?
One of the things that you missed in the police presentation is that up until this year, the administrative staff for police were actually embedded in the police uniform services line item, something I'm not sure that we were all aware of. So that's been pulled out now, but that's something else. So that for last year, we have sort of a dummy figure of what we think that was so that we could compare it. You'll see it when you go back through the notes again.
So it's still in the police budget, but it's not a uniformed officers.
Correct. It now just says administration, and everything you see in uniform services is actually like a person in a uniform.
Thank you.
Okay. There are no further questions. We will close out this section and we will move to 5.01, which is authorization to execute a contract with Wind River Environmental LLC for catch basin cleaning services. Water resources, for the number of water resources items.
Thanks. This is one of many, and Megan Moyer, Division Director, Water Resources, and James Gerard from our Stormwater Program will kick it off.
Thanks, councilors. This request is actually to build upon a similar contract that was executed 2 years ago, also with Wind River, to perform catch basin cleaning. Essentially, the city has about 3,000 catch basins. They perform an important job here in the city, both as a drainage mechanism, but also they capture a lot of sediment. That sediment does build up over time and needs to be cleaned annually. We strive to get about a quarter to a third of our basins cleaned each year. That's somewhere between 750 and 1,000. A little while back, our staffing didn't allow us to get up to those numbers, so we have been shooting for a full 1,000 basins over these past few years and have been achieving that with the assistance of a contractor. A lot of our streets crews do perform a significant amount of catch basin cleaning, but they simply can't keep up with the amount that we're hoping to get in these next couple of years. So with that said, we're hoping to get approval from the Board of Finance today to continue to work with Wind River for up to potentially 2 years, but this initial request is just for a single year.
Great, thank you. How would the board like to proceed? Are we ready for a motion? Go ahead, Councilor Hightower.
Yeah, I'll move to approve and recommend that the city council authorize as recommended on board talks.
Great, is there a second? Second by Councilor Jennings. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. 5.02, authorization for $188,927, amendment to the construction loan from the Vermont Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund and execute a contract with Engineers Construction Inc. for $188,312 for design, build, rehabilitation on that sewage force main. Could we get a little background on this?
Absolutely. Our Public Works Water Resources Engineer, Ashley Valenti, will talk a little bit about our Clean Water Resiliency Plan and how this fits into our ongoing commitment to the lake.
Hi, so this is a continuation of the rehabilitation of our existing pump stations within our Clean Water State Revolving Funds. We have completed the rehabilitation of this particular pump station, and under that contract originally, we were going to be doing tiered in place pipelining of the associated force main with that pump station. However, upon initial TVing inspection, the CIPP lining was not a feasible option due to some additional bends and the location of those bends in the force main. So we have gone out via RFP for a design build contract to perform a trenchless rehabilitation of this force main, which would provide a completely new pipe instead of rehabilitating the pipe that is existing. And because we are also going across the railroad tracks, the Vermont rail system requested or requires trenchless rehabilitation. And so this contract would be Engineers Construction, ECI would design the new layout as well as construct it within this season under the Clean Water State Revolving Fund.
Great, thank you.
A small loan amendment is needed when we've total up all of the projects between Flynn Pump Station and Fletcher Pump Station, which Fletcher also had included a couple of unknowns that we had to address. We do need this small incremental loan amendment to the overall loan.
Thank you. Is the board ready for a motion? Further questions?
I'll move to approve that the city council approve the resolution as shown on Board Docs.
Thank you, Councilor Hightower, seconded by Councilor McGee. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Brings us to 5.03. I'll read it. Authorization for $198,926 amendment to the planning loan from the Vermont Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund and execution of amended consultant agreement with Hoyle Kenner Associates for $398,881 for the planning of industrial treatment. For planning of industrial treatment, pretreatment program, sorry. Excuse me, Megan, would you like to speak to this further?
Absolutely, because it's a project that's been around for a little while, and so some of the newer counselors and or existing counselors or older counselors may not recall. But fundamentally, both the state requires as well as our own system really demands that we have a burgeoning business community, a lot of industry, a lot of breweries, food and beverage processing, and we love and support those businesses, but the fact of the matter is they do discharge higher strength waste. And so starting a number of years ago, pre-COVID and then going into COVID, we endeavored to implement or to study and then create a program that would help us generate our own local regulations around how to manage those wastes and to potentially require businesses of a certain size and a certain amount of discharge to better control those on site. The sort of too long don't read is a lot of the testing that we did happened during COVID, and the flows were not, the flows and the discharges were not what is actually typical for our system. And so we functionally do have to redo those. The other piece is that I think together with our consultants, we thought or believed that the industries would know more about their process and about what they were discharging. And when we've done a lot of surveys of them, they really just don't have that information. And so in order to create a defensible, fair process, we're going to, we hemmed and hawed about whether to require them to sample and have them expend that cost. But because this is a program that we're trying to do as a lake-friendly municipality, a lot of the scope involves going and directly sampling them. So we have recent solid data. The really good news is that even though we are asking for a loan amendment, a significant portion of that is actually likely eligible under a Vermont ARPA grant. The grant has not been released yet, but we will be able to incur costs and then reimburse them against the grant. So we're hopeful that the impact to the ratepayers is actually going to be minimal if we're successful in securing this grant. However, we do need to move forward with the project, and so we want to have that loan amendment as a backstop so that we can move forward and execute the amended contract with our consultants. I guess that was still kind of long, but longer or shorter than it could have been.
Thank you, Megan. Floor is open for more questions or a motion. Councilor McGee.
I'll move to recommend that the city council approve the attached resolution.
Great, thank you, Councilor McGee Hightower. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And this now brings us to 5.04, water, wastewater, and stormwater. So ARPA funds. And Megan, who's going to lead?
Division Director Megan Ware and Kate Karamowski, our water resources engineer.
yes, I'll probably take this one, the money one, and then Kate will take the reservoir one after that, if that's okay, Kate, so she can answer any questions about the technical aspects of the projects that we're proposing. If we turn back time, we had originally requested a allocation of the ARPA funds. Water, wastewater, and stormwater projects are one of the eligible categories for the city ARPA funds for expenditure. And we had based that request of $860,000 on the estimate at the time for what work was needed, what water resources work was needed for University Place. As a result of some really creative thinking and some modeling by our engineering team, we have now determined that we're able to sort of value engineer, or not value engineer, but substantially reduce the overall cost of that project down to 267. And so our request is to repurpose any remaining funds of the 860 to either both or at least one of these two projects. The primary one is to reconstruct the water main on Overlake. This is a pipe that was part of our original bid, but we didn't have funding at the time. Even at the time that we bid it out, it had broken a number of times, and then it proceeded to break even more times this last winter. And so it's sort of top on our list because of the amount of emergency costs and overtime, and our crews having to be out there in the middle of the winter. I'm fairly confident that if we don't repair this main, that we're going to be in the same place this winter. And so that's our top priority for repurposing those funds. And then should funds remain from doing both University Place and Overlake, we would potentially like to repurpose some of those funds to fund the planning stage of the Reservoir Improvements Project, which is the second or the next item on the agenda. That project, the Reservoir Improvements Project planning phase, we have enough capital money to fund that, but if we were able to use some of this money to fund that, then we'd be able to take the money originally set aside for the reservoir project and spend it on other needed capital projects.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Floor is open for questions or motion. President Paul.
Thank you. I would make a motion to take the action as recommended before attendance.
Second. Councilor Jang, further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you. And this brings us to, I believe, the final water item, 5.05, engineering services agreement for Reservoir Improvement Project. And Kate, why don't you go ahead and give us a short summary?
So our original pump station was built in 1867. It's historically registered and it feeds the whole high service area. There's two distribution service areas in the city. The high service includes the level 1 trauma center and university medical center. This pump station's done us well, but at this point in time, we need to look at our future and into needed repairs and upgrades. There's a few listed out in this memo itself, including that we need mixing equipment, full roof replacement of the retaining wall and fencing. The pump station itself, we need to evaluate whether it needs to be rebuilt or replaced. We've worked with, we've gone through the RFP process and I've worked with Dufresne Group to come up with a cost of $90,000 for the planning phase, which would be a full evaluation of the pump station and the reservoir and the security on the site to give us a preliminary engineering report. And then that report would lead into the next stages of a potential CWSRF, or DWSRF funded project. Or that's the intent.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Floor is open for a motion or questions.
Thank you. So now that I had asked Megan about this, so now we're in number 2, and the first one passed. So now the 90,000 isn't 90,000, it's 90,000 minus the 67 or so 64. I can't remember now. So that's good news. I mean, I'm happy to make the motion as the maximum limiting amount, with the understanding, obviously, that we've The first has happened, so we now have a much lower number, which is great news. So with that understanding, I would make the motion as requested in board docs.
And for full transparency, I think the number for Overlake is still an estimate, and it is a very generous estimate. So we believe that we certainly will have at least that 67, if not more, to dedicate to this project. I just want to be clear that in construction, we can find all sorts of things. And so I wanted to make sure that the council knew that we did in fact have enough cash capital should, things come to pass that we don't have the ARPA funds, or maybe we only get 30,000. So just to make sure that's clear for everybody, since Councilor Paul and I did have a separate conversation.
Great, thank you. We have a motion.
We do have a motion, seconded by Councilor Jang. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Team DPW.
Thank you for your support. We always appreciate it.
Okay, next up, 506, reclassification request for community service officers. So, police item, welcome Karen, police HR item. How would the board like to proceed on this? President Paul.
Thank you. I'm happy to make the motion, or if you would prefer to have Director
Director Durfee, Karen, why don't you give us a quick summary of where we're going?
Councilor Lee, for all the counselors here, we are seeking to expand the CSO program. It needs to be able to, there's a pay equity issue between the park rangers and CSOs. We just want to reclassify that job so that it is at least competitive with that position. So that's what it needs to do. And then, is the TV?
Yeah, it's right after you.
Okay, so, and there's additionally, same thing with the domestic victims advocate within the police station and the civilian ranks, which of course we're talking about expanding and promoting. There's an identical position in the city of the CJC, and this person has been serving for 25 years in this role, so that needs, that's a pay equity issue. We need to bring her up to where the others are.
Great, so go ahead, Councilor Jang.
Last time I heard the park rangers were high, some of them were hired already. Park rangers
were hired.
Yeah. And why is retroactive pay is only from May 20?
This has been something that since the inception of the job was flagged by Human Resources. And the reason that, this has been on the agenda, but the BPOA they actually wanted to discuss the duties of the CSO. And there was some talk about some of the duties not being performed by a CSO. We were able to reach an agreement, so that extended this coming before this body.
When?
I think Councilor Jang.
I want to make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Thank you. Second by President Paul. Excellent.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And just heard the, don't go anywhere, it was only for 5.06, just in case we may need to hear for 5.07. We'll see. We're ready for either a motion or questions on the domestic violence option. President Paul.
Thanks, I'm happy to make the motion as requested as recommended.
Excellent. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Hightower. I misstated the title, of course. Domestic violence victim advocate is the reclassification, the name of this session. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I just want to thank the council for working with me on this. Everyone had, President Paul and everyone had a hand in this, so thanks for helping me move this police item forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 5.08, FY 23 traffic markings contract award request, PW. Welcome, Jeff. When you keep this up for us.
All right, to give you a quick overview, so this is basically our annual pavement marking contract. So this is all the lines, white and yellow lines, the green bike lanes, the stencils, the sharrows, all that painting. Right. It's important to note this is paid for by meter money, 1/4 at a time. And so this is, and actually the good news story here is the contract is slightly more expensive. It's about 10% more expensive, but we also have 22% more green bike lanes painted. And that's a massive percentage. It's like 30–40% of what this cost is. So that's really driving. So it's not inflation, it's not supply chain, or actually per-unit costs are actually reasonable. This is not a construction going wild price thing. This is just we're painting more. And we only got one bidder, and it's the same contractor we've had for a number of years now. They do a good job. And the other really important thing is we've shifted the way we contract this. We used to do it on a seasonal basis. So we put it out in January, February, and everybody's scrambling in March, and then they're scrambling to get feet on the ground. We like to get this done now, so they have a contract for July. So they're actually, as they're doing their primary job, which is spring painting, they're actually at the end of the contract, but they've had a whole year to plan to get
This is for next spring's painting.
This is for
I was
FY
saying, I thought
23.
this painting had already happened.
Right. Right, so this is the FY 23, so starting in July, we have them under contract, and we can bring them back in the fall if we want to touch up something. or do whatever. So give
This
us
is
a
a
little more flexibility.
major improvement over the years where there are other years where we've been getting the work done.
Yeah, I was there for So we changed it. Yeah, and we're actually getting kudos out on the street. We have bicyclists actually like giving thumbs up. We have people roll down the windows saying thank you. What I do have to say is warm days does not equal painting, because if it's going to be 30 degrees at night, you still can't paint when it's 75 degrees. It's still cold. It's too cold to take the paint. So just if people are complaining, it's 2 or 3 days of 75-degree weather, but if it's 30 at night, there's still nothing. That happened to us this year. Anyway, much more flexibility.
Great. Discussion, motion, that's reading.
Move to take the action as recommended in the docs.
Second.
Thank you. Right, our further discussion, yes, Mr. Jane.
Are there private entities that are doing crosswalks painting for themselves? Or that will come with price? I guess.
We do the crosswalks we do not under this contract. They're actually done by city forces, and they're going slow this year. We have 2 seasonals out of the So we're struggling to get our crosswalks done. If anybody's painting in the right of way, it should be us. It should not be private entities painting.
We can follow up and discuss, absolutely, especially if it's on the Cambrian Way, which is not yet accepted as a city street, then they would be maintaining that. But if it's out on North Avenue, that city right of way, it should be our forces. So we can talk. They are required to actually do, one caveat is they're relocating the crosswalk, the RFB. And so as long as they can follow our ordinance and work with our excavation inspector, they can do that work in the right of way. So happy to follow up and talk about that.
And can you also do the 2 people who wear more safety gears?
Okay. We'll follow up on that tomorrow and be in touch.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here's a ball.
Thank you. So I have a question. Since the street painting out right outside, I've had a number of people who have approached me and asked whether or not they've seen it in other cities that there are crosswalks that are painted, not just white lines, but particularly people that have seen crosswalks that have been painted, colors. Is that, I know that there's probably an MU, whatever it's called. MUTC, what is it?
MUTCD. Manual
MUTCD.
Uniform Traffic Control Device.
Yes, that one. There's probably like there's a rule, I'm sure, and that rule says that you can't do that. However, there was a rule that said that we couldn't do what we do outside. right in front of City Hall. So found a way around that rule. Is there, if there were, you know, organizations, or if there were particularly, if there were children under adult guidance who wanted to do something and they came to you, is that something that could be done? Or is that something that you would?
Right. Having been involved in both, the ones where we, a couple of years ago, did work with Champlain College to install one custom crosswalk, follow up with V-Trans and Federal Highway on that, and then the Black Lives Matter installation. The state and the feds hold a pretty strong line on artistic installations. That crosswalks serve a function to protect pedestrians. The Black Lives Matter installation is not a traffic control device. It's not near a crosswalk. We separated the words to be away from the crosswalks. They're holding a pretty firm line that they do not accept artwork in and around regulatory devices. Can that, you know, some communities have done it off of state and federal highways. The lawyers nationally say that the cities could be at risk if someone gets hurt. Ultimately, that's a conversation, if we're not on a state and federal highway, that we could have locally, but they urge against it.
I just thought it might, you know, given the amount of artwork that we see around the city, that this might be an opportunity to do something, you know, constructive. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're still, I don't believe we lost track, but I don't think we have a motion yet for this 5.08. We did, all right, so ready for a vote then? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for all the DPW items. So next up, we have 5.09. We have 4 BD items to follow. So welcome, Darren. 4 BD items, including this one, which is FY23 rate change. Why don't you give a short summary, Darren and Emily, about where we stand in this kind of multi-step process?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, good afternoon. So as we discussed with the board during our budget presentation, we're planning for a 3.95% rate change for FY23. Originally, we communicated that we thought we would need a 4.9%. We were able to reduce that during the course of the budget process to a 3.95. I do just want to contextualize it a little bit because we did have a 7.5% last year, which was our first rate change coming out of the pandemic in 12 years. And at that point in time, our commitment was, let's have rate changes more regularly and let's have them be more moderate. And that way we can keep up with the cost of doing business and not end up in a single year where we have something that is more than customers can bear. And so that is why we're bringing forward another rate change. We actually needed at the PUC, our documented level of need last year was 11.8%. We only asked for 7.5%. So in a sense, we're sort of completing part of that process this year. We are being affected by inflation. We are seeing energy markets being quite volatile. And one thing I want to say there for our customers, we're actually well protected from that because we are 100% renewable. And we had the most expensive January in the history of the New England grid. And instead of that costing us and significantly impacting our customers, we were actually able to not only insulate our customers, but better our financial position by running the McNeil plant, for example, during the winter time. So that's a plus. The net zero energy revenue bond is a plus, is helping us to hold rates lower than would otherwise be the case. But we are still seeing upward pressures, from transmission costs, from workforce costs and others. And that's why we're coming before you with the 3.95%. If it's approved this evening, we would plan to file it in mid-June. It would take effect as a surcharge on customer bills August 1st, similar to what happened last year. And the PUC would review it, make sure that it is appropriate. If there's any difference between the 3.95% and what's ultimately approved by the PUC, that would be refunded to customers at the time the PUC makes the decision. And I do just want to also mention that we are continuing to plan to have our energy assistance program for low-income customers with a 12.5% discount available starting July 1st. That program is currently available with a 7.5% discount. We're boosting that to 12.5% starting July 1st. Glad to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Darren. How would the board like to proceed with questions or ready for motion? That's okay.
Be the dollar amount of the 3.95% total, not 5%.
Total in terms of our budget?
Yes.
Oh, do you have that on top of your head?
You can email.
Well, we have kind of a rough proxy for 1%. Okay, we'll email you the correct figure. I thought you were going to ask about customer bills, which we do have that. We'll get to the exact number.
I'm happy to make the motion. Comment city council.
Great, thank you, Councilor Jennings. Is there a second? Second by President Paul. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. More fun than talking about rate increases, talking about accepting grant money for charging stations.
Yes. Would you like a summary?
Yes.
So this next item is a little more than $95,000 state grant that will help us install up to 5 charging stations that are going to be mounted on poles that are for street parking. And this is particularly going to be focused on the Old North End and some areas in downtown and part of the South End, where our team has identified, per the state parameters, a high prevalence in terms of multifamily housing, in terms of lower income folks, and where there may not be readily available off-street parking with charging. And so we're going to be using a new technology for us, connecting to the streetlight poles. These will be publicly available. They'll be able to charge using our same rate that we have at all of our different public charging stations around the community. And just continued part of our efforts to make charging available everywhere in Burlington. We had heard previously, particularly for the Old North End, that there wasn't adequate charging available. So I think this grant's going to help us, along with some efforts we're making with our own investments, to add more charging that's publicly available in those areas of the city.
Is this something that can be replicated elsewhere if there's demand for it? Or is it
Absolutely.
basically any light post can be rented?
Yeah, there's no infrastructure limitation. So if this is a success, we could replicate it.
That's right there.
Yeah, and that was my question. At least like from my understanding, it looks like we're exclusively doing this in the Old North End and the South End. Which as the east, one of the east representatives, and I'm sure somebody in the new North End feels the same way. Yeah, I understand like the income, but at the same time, I feel that there's also low income neighborhoods in the East District, and I'm sure that's also true in the North End, so.
Right, and this is not the exclusive program that we have. So we also have our multifamily rental and condo building charging program with EV Match. So we're planning to have 60 of those chargers go out over the course of the next couple of years, which could happen in the New North End, in the East End, and elsewhere around the city. Public chargers as well. And I know we're working with UVM to add some chargers on campus at different locations too. But really would welcome if you have locations that you look at and you think this is somewhere we need charging and there's a need and there's not infrastructure, we have the resources with the revenue bond. We would love to work with you to find those locations.
Yeah, I definitely feel like some of the big, like Bayberry Commons, I don't know if they have one, but Bayberry Commons is Overwatch, and of course the one out on north. Yeah, would be cool places to.
Excellent. I'll follow up by email, get some connections with our team who's looking at this.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
That's Jay.
Thank you. I think this is great. This is amazing. And I was just wondering if there is an app or technology that can connect all of them. Someone can just look and say where I can go.
Yeah, so a lot of them have different apps. What we've used primarily in the city has been ChargePoint. So if you have a ChargePoint app, you can charge at pretty much all of the locations in Burlington that are public stations. The rental property stations are with a company called EV Match, so they have an app. The one I would recommend is called Plug Share. And that kind of looks at the city as a whole and other areas of the country too, but you can locate Burlington and it'll show you all the different chargers, whether it's a DED public or a rental charger, anything that's available publicly will be on the map on Plug Share. So that's kind of the app that's the umbrella app.
And this is the last question related, but not the same. How is the eBay about people? Are they taking advantage to access more e-cars now?
The program is growing. We're getting close to our 400th EV and plug-in hybrid rebate. I actually think it would be growing faster right now, given the very high gas prices. We know people are doing more Google searches for EVs. We've been advertising. And I think the supply chain limitations are a huge challenge. Not just new vehicles, but also pre-owned vehicles. Finding an affordable pre-owned vehicle is a lot more challenging, particularly for an EV. And then getting a new one, in a lot of cases, there are wait times. I did just see that the Chevy Bolt next year's model is going to be available for around $26,000, which is a significant discount from where it's been. That could really make driving a new EV even more accessible. So I am hopeful we'll see even more growth in the future, but I think the supply chain needs are acute.
When was that?
Just the last week or so. Yeah, so that's gonna be a very affordable, brand new EV with about 250 miles of range.
It's out next year.
Yeah, the 2023 model year, so I think I'll even be out later this year.
All right, well, we'll start more discussion. Pricing discussion, as you say. It's fine. We're gonna meet here, we're walking out, but it should be noted that electric vehicles are getting less and less expensive. So. Right from.
All the since the immediate action is recommended on board docs.
Great, is there a second? Councilor Channing. Said this was gonna be a fun discussion, right? All those, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Another grant acceptance, 5.11 for district energy federal funds and resolution supporting the creation of district energy 501c3. Go ahead, Darren.
And I want to welcome Michael Ahern from Evergreen Energy, who's with us as well. They've been our partner on the district energy project. So the two items before you are accepting a $5.16 million grant that Senator Leahy was able to secure for us to support the district energy project. Very significant. We're very grateful to the Senator and his staff for that work. We're in the process of working with the Department of Energy to access those funds. And then I'll just speak as well to the other item, which is a resolution supporting the creation of a 501c3 that Evergreen would run and that would manage the district energy work for us, both the development work going forward, and then if we are successful getting to a go decision later this year, manage the permitting, the financing, the construction and operation of the district energy system. We are right in the process of finalizing a letter agreement on what the next stage of development work will be with our partners, UVM Medical, UVM, the Intervale Center, Vermont Gas, BED, the city, and Evergreen. And so we anticipate over the next 6 months a fairly intensive set of work. I do want to mention there are some headwinds for the project that we're dealing with. Construction pricing has significantly increased as we've seen in the projects around the city. Has been the same case for district energy. We're hopeful we can see some reduction in that by the end of the year. Fuel costs have been incredibly volatile, and that has some effect on the system as well. And then interest rates for financing, as this would be a debt finance project, have been also moving in the wrong direction. We're hopeful we can make a go decision when we're in a better place. But all of that said, these two items will help us keep the project on track, and our goal remains to get to a go decision, and if we're successful, to have this be a construction project in 2023 and 2024 and operation eventually in 2024. So this will keep us on track with that schedule.
President Paul.
Thank you. I don't know if it would be amenable to you in the interest of time and given the fact that these are related. I would move 5.11 and 5.12 and would make a motion to, on both to take the action as recommended in board docs.
Thank you, President Paul. Is there a second for that combined motion? That's what we seconds. Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Councilor Adjourn.
Yeah, so this just came, I mean, I know that we've talked about this but before even I was on council, and I think even since then, but I guess I'm curious, kind of with the speed of this, one, like what deadline we're under in terms of accepting this. Two, if we think that doing some more public outreach to inform folks that this is happening, because it is kind of a big shift, would be a good thing to do before we accept the grant, or yeah, so I'll leave those two questions there.
Sure. So in terms of the project, it's still not a definite go. We still haven't gotten the sign off from all the key partners that would lead us to permitting, financing, construction. And we'll hopefully have more engagement on that over the course of the rest of 2022. In terms of the grant, I received a letter, was attached to the packet, where we had to submit a one-page summary within 14 days, which I did. The Department of Energy is supposed to get back to us. They're a little late from when they said they would be getting back to us, but they'll come back to us with a cost share amount, which we have ample funds within the district energy project to cover the cost share. And we're supposed to execute the agreement within several weeks from when. Within several weeks from when they come back to us with the cost share. So I wanted to be prepared and not lose out on the opportunity, obviously, by having the approval in hand, because they've said they'll get back to us in the near future. I'm obviously accepting the grant, having the agreement. If the project's not successful, we would look first for ways to repurpose it for a similar kind of effort at a smaller scale. And ultimately, if we really can't move forward in any way, we can always decide to give the funds back. It's not something I would look forward to doing, but that would be the process from there.
Great, awesome. And then I do, and I guess maybe this is more for discussion at council, but I wonder if, yeah, if Tuke would want to take a closer look at this and have a conversation around like what's next.
Certainly. Yeah, we'd be glad to brief the Tuke at whatever time's appropriate. We had planned a kind of a broader update for this evening as well. But given the number of items on the agenda and the fact that we didn't have this letter agreement fully executed, this is kind of my briefer update.
Great, awesome. Then maybe we can just have this, and this is partially to President Paul, but some update on what this would look like for the full council, when that's convenient, or when that's best in the process for you all.
Certainly.
I just want to clarify how we're going to. So I think the hope is that the council will approve this acceptance tonight. We have months to go before we have the bringing position no make that go no vote decision. You're asking for maybe a work group session or something leading up to that. Will be a very consequential decision when we get there. Some more discussion in advance of that decision would be helpful. Or are you saying you think you need more before this grant?
No, I think this is fine, but I think just it is, I guess, a big enough project that I think people are going to have lots of opinions on.
Yes.
So inviting that as early as possible.
All right, excellent. I would think that would be something. This is something that's been talked about for 30 plus years, pushing 40 now maybe, and
Not as long as the Champlain Park.
No. But I put in the same bucket of long discussed items that we are hoping that we're making progress on closing out on making some resolutions. So and it will, it's
one project from the other.
We will and there will be, it's a if we are able to do this, the city is taking on certain significant long-term responsibilities in certain ways, mitigated lots of financial risk. I think it's a structure that makes sense. But yes, the council fully understanding that and having a good discussion about it before we ask to vote. It's essential, and we'll definitely have that will be a different kind of vote than tonight in terms of preparation for it. Councilor Jen.
And it seems that Evergreen will be managing this program as a profit organization. And we're just wondering, as part of the plan or the agreement, they are also thinking of customer satisfaction. Still
speak to it, and Michael's welcome to as well. The concept for the nonprofit would be that there would be a board of directors that was based here in the community, that potentially BED serving in that role as one of the members of the board, having the University of Vermont Medical Center, which would be a significant off-taker of the energy, potentially University of Vermont, the Intervale Center, BGS, which would be a big facilitator of the project. So I think the goal is to have a local board that would help to govern the process there, working with Evergreen and making sure that the system's operating effectively, that the rates are being managed effectively, and that there is, technical staff on hand to manage any repairs. Michael, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
I think you summed it up pretty well. Just note it's the way the nonprofit would be structured is rates would be cost-based. As Darren noted, we would expect the stakeholders for the system, the customers, as well as VGS and BED to be approving annual budgets and making sure that the system is adhering to those budgets from an operational perspective, and with full transparency, of course, and then strategic direction of the business as well would be approved and led by that same board of governors.
Okay. Do we have a motion yet on this one?
Yes.
We do? Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Yeah, this was for 5.11 and 5.12, right? That was the joint. So this brings us to 5.13. I think we can say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And 2 items remaining. 5.13 Bulk Mobility Corporation lease. Welcome, Cindy, from Recreational Waterfront for discussion. Give a quick summary.
Sure. So we have 2 of the locations for both are on lands that this PRW manages, and so to keep them in line with how we treat other folks that lease lands, we're looking for lease, and it's a 5% of the gross sales of any rides that start from that location. So if they finish at the location, we would not receive any of the revenue, but if it starts from there, we would receive that.
Great.
It's in line with similar ones.
Several years ago, we used to pay a predecessor to provide the service, so that we'll make some revenue on this. Any discussion? Are we ready for motion? Go ahead. That's right there.
Yeah, sorry, just a question, because I just remember, and I don't remember if this was part of another item or if we just got emails. I know that some of the other providers have been worried about like competition. And so I guess I'm curious how we think about assigning these contracts and why none of the local providers, or if they did ask to compete and just weren't competitive, or just kind of where we're ending on that issue.
Sure. So I'll
I mean, I'm happy to speak to like yes, they're having complaints from certain about specific locations, more so, the waterfront location has been the most controversial aspect, I think, unless I'm totally missing your question. That's where most of the controversy has been focused. There has never been any indication that local providers are interested and capable of providing a bike share in this way. If there was serious interest in that would certainly be something that we would discuss. But since there's not been serious interest in that, I think that's how we find ourselves being open to extending once again this bulk lease instead of going out to some new competitive process.
Yeah, if I can just add a couple of things. One was we had one of the providers last year ask for something similar, the idea of being able to kind of have a leased rack. And we went to the Parks Commission to ask if this was something they'd be interested in allowing, and the commission was open to it. Would be a rack that they could lease in a space, but then the provider, that shop owner, decided not to do it. I was actually kind of excited at first because they were going to donate the rack when they were done. So that was just something we did a reach out for, and then also Chapin and his team have found a spot on the waterfront that put an RFP out for if anybody's interested in doing bike rentals down by the waterfront, is a way, again, of just trying to listen to the shop owners and making sure that they've got fair and equitable access to the waterfront too. I don't know if anybody ended up putting a bid in on that or not. That might still be open.
The RFP is open, so if anybody's interested, we've let all the shops know. Happy to have their engagement.
Yeah, so I think we worked hard to try to listen. Responsive. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Are we ready for a motion?
What was it? But they pay taxes though. Because they have business.
I would assume that they pay taxes. I don't know how, I don't think myself, I don't, that's like a CT question.
I will find out.
I'm like, well, I don't know how that works.
The question
I just
is,
make sure I get my
does
money.
Shop owners pay taxes or does this Bolt?
No, both.
Well, Bolt, no, I mean, Bolt has this lease with us. Which the lease defines the terms of, there isn't some separate property tax agreement for these.
No, but I'm curious as to whether the tax law considers a rental of a bike a sale, and therefore they're paying sales tax. I don't have that data.
I mean, the fact they operate in a business in the city of Burlington, making public information, some level of taxes.
So whether they are subject to some kind of, if they are subject through the nature of this, which through to state, it would be a state tax. Don't think there would be a city tax that they would be subject to for this kind of service. So that would be the question, is whether this is a service that most services are not taxed. Which is a sales tax generally applies to sale and gross receipts are taxes that apply to the sale of items. Property, this is not property that they are, owning or controlling other than through this lease, this agreement. Relative to compensation, and again, just a few years ago, we were paying tens of thousands of dollars for this source. So the fact that they are now paying us something is because this is a public service. This is essentially, this has some public transportation value, has been the thinking. So in the same way that, so that's where we are. It's a fair question whether they should be paying us more. Certainly, if we in future years, as this continues to evolve, there could be different compensation structures, but I don't believe the city is expecting any revenue beyond what's articulated in this lease.
I feel like, the deal, if they do pay taxes, it's fair. But if they don't, and we're only talking about only 2 locations, knowing that they have multiple locations, I feel like we need to look at that.
So can you guys speak more to how we determined that there would be payments for these 2 locations only?
Part of it is for these 2, we tried to, since they're park managed properties, we just try to make sure they're consistent to how we treat anybody else that's in our parks. So for example, Maven down at the skate park, the other trailer there, they pay 5% commission. So I can't speak for the other places. So I try to make sure they're equal to other uses in our parks.
I think we should move table this until we get further information.
Will there be an impact to saving this for the 20th? I mean, does this impact, what are we doing here exactly? This is the 1 year, this is for the overall lease, but this is speaking just to two locations.
Two locations. If there's a decision to table, it doesn't impact because this one is, it's stating in the lease that the payments start from when the new contract started, which was with Colt. So this is only for the parks managed spaces that I'm here for a lease for this payment request. If you choose to table it again, the draft lease that we have.
So is this carved out of the rest of the lease, which is already approved? It's like a separate agreement?
This is the lease. This is a lease for them to have those 2 on parks lands, again, to make it equitable with other
And that's
park
not somehow
users.
covered by the agreement we've already set with them.
The agreement says that they need to work with us to get access to city-owned property. Most of their pods are actually on private property. They work with private property owners to do that. So this is something that is referenced in the agreement. They need to get permission from the city for pods within the right of way.
Are these facilities already operating, or we're waiting until this?
They're already operating. They were there last year. Last year, we had used, the first time they came on, we used a language called encumbrance, and we got a per foot price from them. And Attorney St. James said that we should be using a lease rather than encumbrance, because encumbrance really isn't a parks function. We don't have encumbrances, we have leases. So before it was an encumbrance and they paid that square foot price. But now we're going to a lease, and since it's a lease, any lease requires city council approval. So they were paying a fee.
Okay, so many of the other locations, this is such a different situation because it relates to the private players. So this Councilor Jang's request is to defer this for until the next probably at least 2 weeks. Probably would not be the 13th. So the impact of that would be to delay when maybe to delay when money starts flowing to the city for this, but not.
Correct. Yeah.
So that becomes a question, Councilor Jang, and we probably push this back a couple weeks. I don't think it's likely we're going to propose a different structure than this, but if you're have serious misgivings on it, want to delay, how does the rest of the board feel about it? I would prefer to get it done tonight, but others are having misgivings as well.
I'm comfortable moving forward.
You are comfortable?
Yeah, I would like to get some clarity on the questions that was being asked, but it feels like that's this particular item, so.
So would one of you like to make a motion to move forward, or maybe if you want to request additional information to come back at a later date, maybe with respect to future agreements? So
To approve and recommend a one-year lease with Golden Ability Corporation as listed on board docs.
second by Councilor McGee. Further discussion?
Yes, I feel as if, we need to look into the lease agreement that we have, so it's a general lease. Are they paying taxes? What type of leases they have, people, what type of revenue, in terms of the business we have with them. What is the city gaining in terms of taxes or leases, etc. in general? This is very explicit, but I asked the general question, and the answers were very clear. I think it's fair for us to understand that.
Yes, so it does seem we are treating, because of the nature of different departments having different public areas, there may be some difference from location to location. We did when did we approve the overall lease? It was
May or late.
So that is.
Yeah, I think it was May 5th was the date Rob gave me as the official date.
So the overall lease, the overall agreement is in place and it's not up for changing for another year. With this vote that was proposed, we would lock in compensation here. I do think it's a fair question and kind of an interesting question. If there are other public locations that we're not charging for, if we are charging for this one, is there some inconsistency there that we should consider doing something different on? And I don't think we, by taking this action, have lost the ability to do that. So I would certainly commit to you, Councilor Jang, it doesn't have to be formally part of this, but that we would have a follow-up communication about the other public locations. Does that seem reasonable for now? Okay, excellent. Thank you, Councilor Jang. I think this has flushed out kind of wrinkleness that I had sort of escaped me to. So thank you for that. And again, this gives us a way forward so it doesn't bollocks up anything. So if there's no further questions, I'm going to vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Chapin, if you can, I think the rest really falls outside of Parks and is more in your court. So if you can help me make it on the, can I just make Councilor Jang to get communication and hurry up a period of time on that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That brings us to the last item of the night, 5.14, allocation method and standards for common area fee formula and establishment, common area fees for the tertiary marketplace for fiscal year 2023. Welcome, Kara. Why don't you give us a quick summary? I am mindful we are a little bit late getting upstairs now.
I can be quick. So as per charter, the Tertiary Marketplace Commission makes a recommendation as to the marketplace fees. They are charged per square foot of ground floor establishments on the marketplace. They voted to leave the rate unchanged at $2.87 per square foot. I will note it has been at that rate since fiscal year 17.
And this did have the, sorry, I didn't say this, but had the recommendation
To
from
remain-
the marketplace at this level.
Yes.
So, it's easier that way if we're recommending what the marketplace did too, although it doesn't have, the council does have independent authority. The floor is open for a motion.
Yep, indicated.
Thank you, Councilor Jen. Thank you, Councilor Hightower. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And without objection, we will adjourn the Board of Finance at 6:12 p.m. It's upstairs for the redistricting.